All right, public safety, Councilor Baldwin.
Here.
Councilor Wilkerson. Councilor Jones. Councilor Mims.
She's back there.
Okay. And Councilor Hart.
Here.
So you have one absent, but you have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Salter. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to dispense with the reading and approval of the minutes in the Public Safety Committee meeting of February 28th.
So moved.
Councilor Mills. Councilor Jones. Mr. Harden.
So we second the minutes.
Second the minutes. All right. Councilor Jones is the second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, 4-0. Old business 03-1221, request for consideration of specific enforcement options for the City of Homewood Residential Occupancy Ordinance. Councilor Gwaltney, we carried this item over last time. I believe we have a couple of issues that are related to this, but I believe the one that this topic was trying to address, I assume no movement on that one. You still doesn't like. Yes.
Yes, we're still monitoring that residence for possibility of code ordinance violations, and at this time we don't have any evidence of violation of that ordinance.
Okay.
We had another complaint come to my attention. In the meantime, we investigated it, the same type of ordinance violation to people living in home residence, and our investigation by our code enforcement officer revealed that there is no violation of ordinance. There are actually 3 people at that residence that were residing there within
Okay. Well, with I think the second one was yours, right? That you had sent over?
Yes.
Okay.
There was one recently in Ward 3.
So is the desire of the committee to keep this item, or should we go ahead and move to drop it? Because it doesn't seem like the second one that came in did not have a warrantable offense. The first one, it sounds like that the complainant does not want to move it forward.
I would move to drop.
Okay, motion to
the chief.
Right, we have motion to drop by Councilor Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Harden. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 4-0 to drop. 220122, request for consideration of Forest Brook traffic calming project on Forest Brook Drive from Forest Brook Circle to West Oxmoor via Shades Glen and Delphi.
I'm gonna mess up on this one because Kel Smith asked me. I had in my notes that y'all were sending it out, which y'all did that temporary or that chicane, but that we were supposed to keep it here too. I didn't know. So
Okay.
it's not, y'all need to, that's just what I thought, that y'all were doing
Council
something.
did vote on this on
Right,
Monday
I thought we did.
But I thought, for some reason I had in there that y'all might want to do something different if that didn't work. So if not, we need to drop it.
Do we want to keep this here just for updates?
Or table it.
Can we
drop
table it?
Yeah. Well, if we table it, it's just, we're never going to talk about it. I think if we got updates on how it's going, I mean, if we table it, I think it's going to just sit there.
What did we do with the previous one on South Forest? We passed it through.
We passed it through, and we didn't drop it. It just went.
We didn't want to have to keep it on the agenda for a future update.
Yeah. So I guess my question would be, how long do you want before an update? If it's not going to, I don't think an update in the next month or two is really going to do much of any difference. So
yeah.
I don't see any reason to keep it on the agenda. I would say either drop it or table it.
I'm just going to move the table. I mean, that way it's still there, but we can.
I would prefer to drop it. I mean, because then what we can do is we can have Mr. Smith come back and give us updates on both projects at one time via a new agenda item, and then at that time we can. I mean, it doesn't really matter, I guess, one way or the other.
Well, it's a
I guess I have a question. I think there was another one in a different part of town that I saw.
South Forest?
Upcoming. No, upcoming. And so I feel like we're going to get to the point where there's going to be
this one.
Too many of them staggered and starting at different times that, if we wait to get data on them.
Do you have a preference, Mr. Smith? As for updates?
Yeah, maybe we just maybe we drop and then the referral, we just refer it to this like one traffic calming update for all projects.
Whichever way, I'm good with that.
We do this. I like that idea. Let's drop this item. Let's put an item on referral for next week that is generally traffic calming updates for existing projects. We can then table that item and pull it out if we need to. That way there's no confusion about why we're talking about Forest Brook whenever it's South Forest.
Sure. Talking about traffic calming updates for existing projects. And you want it sent to this committee?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make something. Y'all don't have to sit down. I'm going to put it like
So we have a motion to
Second.
drop 220122 by Counselor Jones, a second by Counselor Wolverton, to be replaced by another item on referral for general traffic calming updates. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, 5-0. Please let the record reflect that Mr. Wolverton.
When did you come in, Ms. Wilder, just a minute ago?
Just
2 minutes ago.
As that one, before that one started.
Okay.
All right, under new business, 050322, request to install traffic calming measures along Morris Boulevard. Cale Smith, PE.
Yes, got this. So, Kinley Horn, Clark Bailey drew this. We met with Counselor Jones and Sims a few weeks ago to discuss this. So, this is the triangle at Morris and Sterrett, right, and Ward 3. And this is what we propose. This isn't temporary chicanes. This is more permanent striping and these raised pavement markers, little armadillos, some people know them as. To slow traffic and to make this whole thing work better than it currently does. Because right now people come off Sterrett and
It's fast.
go 50 miles an hour on that.
Yeah.
So this would prevent that from happening. And also the person that lives here, they could, if they wanted to, they could probably back their car up in there and park there if they were worried about losing a parking spot. Also here, I didn't mention this, at this intersection, we're gonna proposing to do some bulb outs to help traffic calming. These folks own, Edgeland Place, is that right?
Yes.
Edgeland Place, had asked for a stop sign, but, a three-way stop sign, but we prefer to try this first.
Can I ask a question? Just because it seems like, I don't know, I'm just trying to make sure we're following the same process. Was this one ever studied? Do we have numbers on it? I mean, okay. Okay. So it had already been.
Yes, it
Yes, that's
originated
on the bottom.
from a Ward 3 resident through the citizen portal.
Okay.
And it was found that even the posted speed along that segment of Morris is 25 miles per hour. And basically the 85 percentile for eastbound was 31.98 and westbound was 33.88 miles per hour. So anything over 5 to 10, there's a recommendation for consideration of traffic calming measures.
Okay.
So that's what initiated this process. It was done July 14th through 16th, 48 hours, included 1,147 vehicles. There was a 15-minute segment from 6:45 to 7 p.m. one day that included 30 vehicles, which is also a time when there's a lot of kids out playing,
Sure.
which is one of the primary concerns of this one. And there were also over 31 vehicles were going over 40 miles per hour. There's also substantial, in addition to the 51% passenger vehicles, 41% were vans and pickups, 5% were buses and trucks, and 3% were tractor trailers. In addition, I would add that there's consideration of basically all of these intersections tightening up the turning radii, essentially, so that it's not as easy to just quickly go through a wider curb. And if we're going, I guess, westbound on Sterrett there at the triangle, there would be the addition of a stop sign at that point, because that, if I'm not mistaken.
The three red dots are new stop signs.
Okay, or move stop signs.
Or move stop signs.
Yes.
Move.
For example, where Morris comes into Sterrett right now, there's currently a stop sign, but the way it's oriented, people just roll right through it. And again, that's because the turning radii is so wide. And sometimes that stop sign's blocked, honestly, because of cars parked on the street. So these are just some improvements to try to slow that down. The other thing I would like to say is we also amended the item to include this to be Morris as well, I believe to include the intersection of Theta, which also would consider improvements similar to what is being proposed for Edgeland Place. I don't know if that's, cause we amended the item for the committee referral agenda with Amy and discussed that as well. Do you have record of that, Kale? Okay. I mean, the consideration was.
You mean to do a similar bulb out like is on Edgeland Place, down, further down at the Theta and Stair intersection?
Yes, to basically slow to make people stop and you know, take that turn at a slower pace. But we can add that separately and follow up. Counselor Jones, do you remember discussing that? Is that?
Yeah, I remember
discussing it. I don't
okay.
Yeah, and I've got a few comments. This is something that we really have been struggling with. I mean, because this is a new concept in terms of what we're doing here. There's going to be some angry residents, but we want to not give up any parking that they already have on the street. So we tried to come up with a solution, and we spent a long time trying to come up with something that would work to slow it down without just continuing to add stop signs all over the place. So hopefully there's some creativity here, but this will be a test to a lot of other streets that we could potentially put this type of, I guess, solution in place.
Sure. Counselor, are you saying that 5050322 is not worded the way you wanted it to?
Yes, I believe via email we discussed adding Theta to that as well.
Okay,
so actually, I think what we did is we changed it from just saying Morris to saying Morris/Sterrett because there would be consideration for what is proposed at Edgeland Place to also be considered at Theta. But since that is not, since we don't have that tonight, let's just revisit that as another item, it sounds like.
I guess I need to see what, it may have been, we may have changed it on the council referral, but it didn't come over, because she worked ahead because she was gonna be out, she's on FMLA.
Okay.
But, if it was on, you wanna change this, if it was published that way, or just leave it like this? I have to see what's on referral.
Are y'all good to send it out? Do we know that yet?
I mean, I think we're still having a discussion on this.
Let's see if they send it out first.
Okay. I can pull up this.
I will say, I like the creativity of the solution. I don't feel like it's heavily intrusive, but I feel like it accomplishes the goal. So I personally like it.
Yeah. Are all those red dots that are stop signs, are we adding 3 new stop signs there? Is that what we're doing?
Some of them are just being moved. They're 4 total.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I'm sorry, 4.
I think all of those exist but one right
yeah, the
now.
one right there at the curve, I guess, doesn't exist.
It said stair.
That one. Yeah,
What was on
okay.
it?
Everything
It
else
said stair.
exists, okay.
See right here.
What was published?
Stop sign.
The one that Brian has an arrow on that
Yeah.
he did actually does exist. It just
Does.
exists in the curve. The one that does not exist is the one at the top of basically the top left one in the graphic.
So that's
That
a
one.
stop sign right there where that white car is, I see now. Yeah.
It's like Munson.
Yeah, they're all there right
Windsor,
there.
you know.
See it
That's the
except
one that does not exist currently.
Yeah.
And again, so that's to slow down just overall the traffic that is, you know, racing through, basically, to have points to either slow down through changes in being straight.
So are there any other comments from the committee? Any other comments from the gallery?
And Andrew, any comments?
I guess I move to approve and send to finance for funding.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilor Jones, second from Councilor Harden, to move this along to finance. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 5-0 to go to finance.
And we did, we did publish it that said Morris and Sterrett.
Okay.
It just, so we could put
Sterrett?
that word in there. Let's see what it said. The
It
one
said
that got
Sterrett.
published said,
All right.
Morris and Sterrett afterward.
All right, 060322, request for consideration of a crosswalk at Ventura, La Prado, John and McMahon, Councilor Andrews.
Yes, we first started, asked Chief Ross for some increased patrolling in that area, and he had an officer stationed there for several days, and they made many stops and gave 10 total citations over the course of several days. And then our next step on this is that we wanna go ahead and add a crosswalk, at this intersection. And we also need to approve the striping that's at the stop sign as well, that's faded, so I figured we would start here, and then once we are out there paying the crosswalk, re-up the.
Crosswalk across Ventura.
I think that we should do it across both, I think it should be four-way. Because.
Well, it's a three-way stop.
Yeah, it's a three-way stop.
Right,
Where I
yeah,
can see.
so, yeah, that's true, okay, so I think that you should cross Ventura as well as La Prado. I think we should have crosswalks crossing Ventura and La Prado.
And that's just we're just painting on the
Crosswalk, yeah.
We're not putting any kind of electronic thing, just a crosswalk.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I do see is that, we're gonna cut the curb, well, one side of it would go into an inlet, it looks like, maybe. The other side would go into the curb, is that, is there any?
There's not a, are you saying there's not a ramp, like, to come up the curb?
Correct.
Maybe there
Yeah,
needs to be a
that-
ramp to come up the curb, sounds like there needs to be. ADA compliant?
You can't do it on the left-hand side.
Is that, are you talking about on the north side of Ventura?
I can't.
Can we pull it up? Brian, can we pull the intersection up?
Yeah, I got it. Brian, is it okay
Is
to
it
do it,
okay
or
if
should
he
I
does
let
that?
you do it?
I don't know what'll happen. Give it a try.
So Jennifer, which way are we crossing?
Well, I'd like to cross Ventura and.
They won't be on the
Right up.
recording.
That'll be okay. So the left hand is where, that looks like it goes into an inlet right there.
Okay.
And the right hand side would just.
There's no indentation.
Yeah, there's, only problem is, you're gonna have a curb cut to the sidewalk.
You got utilities right there.
Yeah, and you got a light. I mean, you could, for a temporary solution, put the crosswalk in and just go to the curb, and then, and then I don't see any issues here, so those are already ADA both sides.
But I mean, you're gonna have kids on the other side, we've got kids that live down on the north side of Ventura, Bonita, Ventura.
Oh. That's a good looking little curve there, I think.
Yeah, you're good.
Good job
east
there,
west.
city.
So the question is going across Ventura,
Yeah.
is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's what I
You're
was.
gonna have trouble with this curb cut too, because you've
Yeah.
got.
So we
water.
can't have a crosswalk going to a curb?
You can.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can,
That's what I was.
someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, we have ones that are go to a curb, and that's just part of our ADA plan, is to put in the cuts.
Okay.
You're gonna have to eventually.
We will eventually.
If I'm not mistaken, you got either a sewer main or a.
Yeah.
Looks like a water line.
I think you've actually got a couple of different utilities
Yeah.
right
There's
there.
There's a water, call it that stormwater, I guess it's a stormwater.
Now we got a storm drain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you.
What that cover is right there.
I think you've also got some.
Yeah, but if you
I
come
think there's a
back.
little box there too that you can't see.
Oh, Hollywood. Why do we always,
So
it's
extra.
so
Yeah.
exactly, it's always has to be. Yeah, the utilities let us.
So are you thinking on the west side of the Prado across Ventura?
No, I was thinking the east side, but they're telling me all the reasons why we can't, because there's an inlet on this side.
I see that, yeah, there's the inlet.
Oh, come on. I'm used to my iPad, not an iPhone. Come on, phone.
There you go.
Maybe
Sit
could
right
we
there.
get
That's what I wanna
Cale
see right
Smith to go out there and look at it and
I
give
was
us?
gonna say, doing the one across La Prado is easy.
Yeah.
I think we can go ahead and do that one. If you wanna wait and talk about crossing Ventura, then we can, which looks like it might take a little more work and
Okay.
investigation.
So do we send this out and then keep it on the agenda and continue to look at it, or?
What I would suggest is go ahead and send this out for La Prado, and then let's let Cale look at it and bring it back to the agenda specifically as to Ventura
Okay.
at some later point, and let's
Okay.
figure out what we're dealing with in terms of utilities, because it looks like we've got a few different issues
Yeah,
on both sides.
okay. Okey-doke.
Okay. is that a motion to approve for a crosswalk across Lafredo along Ventura?
Well, I can't make a motion, so it's not.
I'll make the motion.
A second.
Councilor Harden, seconded by Councilor Nellens. And an H, not a J. There we go. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries 5-0. All right, moving on. Next. Yes. All right, next item, 070322, public hearing set for April 11th, 2022, at 6 p.m. for consideration of 102 Green Springs Highway as a public nuisance due to violation of Ordinance 1098, litter on private property. Scott Cook. Do you want to go ahead and give us an update?
Yeah, let me start out by saying the litter ordinance as well as the weed ordinance does not even require a public hearing. It's something that the council wanted to do to put another opportunity to inform the property owner you've got right to come. This is the first time I know that now we're coming before the committee.
We changed that. We changed those procedures this time for first.
What is this property?
So it just makes the whole, it's a lengthy process already, it makes it even longer.
Autozone.
Yes. So this is Autozone up here on Green Springs.
The old one or the?
Current.
The old one, yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
They moved into
it's
it.
owned by Malone and High out of Memphis, Tennessee. We've sent them notices in the past about the pole sign is abandoned. They signed for it, it's still remaining there. You can go to some of the other slides.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
This has been
wow.
sitting out there for quite a while.
Because they're not in that building anymore, right?
No, they moved further back in the shopping area.
Can we find them for the pole sign before we, sorry, we're talking about the other, but.
They're in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay, so since I was up there with my letter about the litter, now we've got a window broken
Like I
down
say,
there.
sounds like this
So
needs
that's
to be-
something else
Yeah,
I've
can
got to
we
deal
sue
with.
them? I mean, for.
No, we need to send this to the abatement board.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
needs to go
I mean,
through.
they're a
to
Fortune
condemn their
500
building.
company, they can
No,
afford.
no, that's not them, though.
Yeah,
Is it?
it's a different.
It's an individual owner, I think.
Malone and Hyde owns it.
It's a grocery store chain, Malone and Hyde.
Oh, really? Okay.
They used to own Liberty Supermarket.
So did they buy it when AutoZone moved out?
I don't know. Malone and Hyde is.
We have pole.
Based in Memphis?
Yes.
Yes.
Which is where Autozone is meant to be.
Well, I knew that, yeah.
I mean, it might be the same company, but Malone and Hyde was originally a grocery store.
Okay. So to address the pole sign, what we've done is we've put a hold on any new permits being issued until that pole sign comes down.
Good.
For that property.
For the property, yes, yes.
Because it's been vacant now for 6 months, I think is what we said.
I think so.
They'll deal with this when they get somebody coming along to lease it from them, I
Yeah,
guess.
it gotta go before then.
Yeah,
But I don't
some
think it-
renovations or something, so.
Scott, I'm telling you, I don't think it's gonna help the current situation. It's not gonna, we're not gonna solve.
No, we're dealing with this right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
The
got
litter,
it.
the litter, the litter.
I'm more concerned about the litter than the whole side of this.
I think it was put there when they gutted out the building.
It's got a name, somebody rents it. I
Oh, yeah,
guess.
it's waste management.
Can we call
They hadn't
them?
been paid for it probably and called them, come get it.
That's their problem.
That's right. That's all right.
That's why we're here.
Now it's our
So,
problem.
you know, when you have a dumpster like that, everybody just, hey, that's a good place to go. So that's what we're dealing with.
So I think in addition to the litter issue, Mr. Pugh, can we add this to the abatement board topic to look at since the windows are busted, and maybe that'll get their attention when we condemn their property, leading them for
Yes,
tearing it
yes,
down.
yes.
Well, I guess I'm trying to understand this particular item currently.
Litter on it.
Aside, so aside from the abatement board process, is the council able to fine / put a lien for the litter itself as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's
Two
just-
different processes.
So that's
Right,
like weeds
okay.
or whatever else.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Correct.
All right, so since there is a public hearing set for April 11th, the appropriate motion for this would just be to carry it over for now, or unless, I guess we could pass it
Send
out.
it out.
You can go ahead and send it out.
Send it out.
So what Melody told me is now litter and weeds will come before the committee? Is that, cause it just lengthens the process. It's
Well,
already a
I
long, cumbersome
don't know that it
process.
lengthens the process. If we're setting a public hearing, we can get it done in between
We're
the
setting a
time.
public hearing at the same time it goes on referral, like he said,
Yeah.
so You gotta have a public
I
hearing.
think the
We're gonna
reason-
have committees in between anyway.
It just lets us get some of the details on it beforehand, I guess.
Okay.
When you send it, I put it both places, that's why they already set the public hearing. You didn't have to wait for it to come to committee and then have a public hearing. We're doing it both places.
Yeah, I realize, usually when it goes before the council, they set like the next councilman 2 weeks out.
I don't know why we set this one for April 11th. I'd have to go back and
we
look.
didn't
But-
public
It's time to go to the meeting.
No, we would have, because we would have done,
We
that's
could've
what I'm
done it
saying, we
next
could have
week.
done it, if we could have set it for next week, you still would have been in committee today,
Okay,
so.
okay.
That, why it was April 11th is unrelated to us coming to committee.
Well, maybe Mr. King, we may have to post it in the paper, that's what I'm gonna ask. Or do we just post it on Facebook group?
I don't
He
know,
talked
I'll
how many
look
days
into
has to be
why we
posted.
picked the 11th, but, but yeah, the committee, we don't intend for the committee process to lengthen the process, because there should always be a committee meeting in between setting a public hearing and a public hearing being held.
All right, no, that's what we're.
I would move to, send it out without
It's a
recommendation.
motion to approve and send out without a recommendation, I'm sorry, move to, send this out to council without a recommendation. My tongue is in the way.
Second it.
By Counselor Jones.
Thank
and
you.
Second by Counselor Pardon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries without recommendation, 5-0. 10:03:22, request for consideration of the complete streets ordinance, Counselors Andrews, Walton, and Sims. Counselor Sims, would you like to share some details?
Yes, thank you.
Like that combination.
And I had just 3 quick slides as well, Brian, that I sent you that I'd like to pull up and reference. But so to get started, and that's really small. So I'll tell you what you're looking at though, because the main thing is easy. These are excerpts pulled from the Heart of Homewood plan. In the section that talks about mobility, it makes a recommended action that the city goes further and adopt a complete streets ordinance that goes beyond the current complete streets resolution that the city has. You can go to the next slide. The next slide again is an excerpt from the plan that talks about what complete streets are. Basically, it's a policy that designs roadways for all users. So that includes motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, as well as transit users. And the actual rendering on the right, I thought would come up as a separate slide, but I'm glad it's up because we'll go ahead and reference it. That is basically the cross section of Green Springs from prior construction and what we're working on building right now. As you can see, you're basically going from a 5-lane highway to more of a boulevard type setting. So that's no, you're fine. And so basically, we've already been doing this in practice all throughout Homewood, prioritizing pedestrian improvements, cycling improvements, looking at signage, crossing signals, crosswalks, looking at bike lanes. We can go further and look at connectivity of bike lanes to create bike routes. And this ordinance will basically solidify some of that and make it binding. Hopefully also give us an opportunity to make these reviews when we do road resurfacing projects, because that's often an opportunity to look to see if improvements can be made alongside the vehicular traffic as well. So I met initially with Kale on this, as well as Counselor Andrus, as also met with some partner organizations, including Freshwater Land Trust, the Chamber. I've met with Homewood City Schools as it relates to safe routes to school around school zones to talk about this. They're all very supportive and willing to take on an active role. Once you see the draft ordinance as it exists, it actually includes some advisory committee members, and they have stated that they would be willing to do that if called upon. And so as a next step to just providing this overview tonight, I have a printed draft of the ordinance that I wanted to share with the committee members just to pass around. I have some extras actually too, if anybody else wants one. And that's the intro. So just wanted to open it up for discussion from there.
Okay, can I ask some questions?
Yes. I mean, actually, good. I mean, Chairman.
Yeah, we'll start with the committee and then open it up to everybody else. So, Counselor Hardy.
So that works if you've got enough right of way, correct?
If you have enough right of way, yes.
That's huge. So that, I don't know if that's addressed in here. we need to make sure it's a place we have enough right of way.
Yes.
But also, you're also cutting back on the amount of traffic you're putting on the street, or you're creating traffic problems if it's a really busy street.
Yes, so I do
So-
want to clarify something too related to that. So a complete streets approach, basically you're looking at each roadway segment and thinking about what's appropriate. It doesn't require that cycling, a bicycle lane goes on every street, for example. So it's context sensitive design. You're looking at, you know, what the thoroughfare is, how much right of way is available, and basically also, if you have a parallel route, then that gives you the opportunity to put the, you know, cycling or pedestrian improvements on it and have connectivity that way versus saying every road has to have all of these things.
So to give you an example of that, when we went down the road of doing the 18th Street beautification project, we wanted to have bike lanes because the Strava data told us that we have a huge number of cyclists that come down off the mountain up by Vulcan and turn and go down 28th to Central and pick up our bike lanes there. Obviously, we don't have bike lanes on the 28th section because it's too narrow. The condition, while we would have preferred to have them on 18th Street, the safety issue is too great for cars backing out onto cyclists. So that's why we didn't put them there. So I think that plays into the ordinance in the sense that there may be places where the conditions don't warrant. It may require a greater investment to get there. I think that's one of the things that we have to look at too, is maybe if we have a street like, say, Manhattan or Roseland where it's smart to put them, we have to maybe do some pretty significant, like a capital project when you're funded, to pull up curves and put it back the right way.
If I'm riding that bike, I sure would appreciate those, you call them turtles, those domes or something that a line is not enough sometimes. Like I've ridden my bike along Central and been nervous about those cars, you know, coming into my world as I'm going along there.
What about those car doors opening up on you?
Yeah, well, that's a separate story. And I don't know, you know, this is all part of a budget and an expense, but I'm just throwing that out. But sometimes just a painted line doesn't do enough to protect a bicyclist.
I agree, and I think this is the step that, you know, we need to go so that we can, instead of just painting a line like we did on Central, we can then say, you know what, if this is the direction we want to go as a city, we'll put in, you know, more safety, more protections, more barriers, whatever it needs to be to make it more official. But I think the more bike lanes and such that we have on our streets, the more aware people will become. When I'm in Homewood, there's likely to be bikers in the street.
You just have to start somewhere.
Yep.
You just have to put it on paper, you have to put it in writing, and you just have to make it, you know, you just have to start, this establishes that conversation. I agree.
And I mean, I've done the Central as it then turns and becomes that very
right
tight.
in the middle.
I mean, yeah, I just hoping someone's gonna hit me and I assume it's it. You know, it's a little harried as you're coming up to 18th Street, as you're coming around Central, and you kinda gotta get out of the bike lane and into the main lanes of traffic. And I know there's nothing we can do about that, but anyway.
Let me know when you're riding on there next time.
I'll give you advance notice.
Councilor Jones.
Where did you get this ordinance?
Yes, so the ordinance actually comes from basically I customize it from an ordinance that was adopted by the city of Birmingham. One of the previous roles I had in my day job was working with Safe Routes to School in coordination with area schools, and was part of an advocacy group that worked to get the city of Birmingham's ordinance written and adopted. So that's kind of, I took what, you know, I had access to and amended it. So there's quite a few changes, but you know, this is a point to start from, so.
All right, any other questions from the committee or counselors or audience? Yeah, gallery. That is, I say peanut.
The only other thing I'll say is this is gonna be costly. We follow this every time. It'll be costly.
Well, I think
We do it street by street.
I think it sounded like it's more a mindset for Lynn's to look at, not necessarily to dictate what certainly happens or not. But.
We just have to, like, it's like, we're retrofitting our streets from the 30s and the 40s and when the car was king, and, you know, everybody loved getting in the car and go for a ride. No, but that's what we're doing, we're retrofitting. I mean, we're having to take a situation and put it in the way that the modern person who lives in Homewood wants to use. I mean, the people who live in Homewood, you know, are active and they like to get around, they like to do things other than in their cars. And we need to provide that for them and make it safe.
I also think that some of the residential streets where we're having considerations for traffic calming right now, you know, there's ample right of way to consider some of these improvements. Even looking at the bulb outs and crosswalks, I mean, that's all part of complete streets as well. And we have, you know, we were talking about Short Oxmoor the other day. You know, I think there's 35 feet of right of way, or there's a lot of right of way on that straightaway segment. There's currently a bike lane one direction, but we were talking about, you know, maybe there's room to widen that, buffer that. You know, those are type of considerations where when resurfacing occurs, maybe we can look at that. And this would kind of encourage that every time those opportunities come up that we look at it. As far as the cost considerations, I will reference that in the exceptions section of the ordinance, it basically says that the design considerations will occur, but basically, if it becomes cost prohibitive to make any improvements, if it's 20% over the cost of the project, then that, you know, warrants an exception.
Well, it says in here economically feasible in the fourth, whereas.
Is there any grant funding or anything that would help offset some of that in the future or no?
I mean, I think that the issue with grant funding is always going to be
time.
Yes, time and additional requirements.
Yeah, and there's one of it's not CMAQ. One of them can be used for pedestrian improvements. I forget which one it is though.
It's not CMAQ for
TAP.
air improvement?
I think it is TAP, isn't it?
Transportation Alternatives Program.
Can I add one thing? Is there any way we can do education, like some type of, I don't know, what frustrates me continually is that bikers are not using the bike lane. They're driving on the regular lane when there's a bike lane available, and then people are in the middle of the street and we have sidewalks. We built all these sidewalks, and they're walking down the middle of the street. So I don't know if there's any answer to that, but
I think you could.
I don't know. It's like it's great. We have all these vehicles to get people. Use vehicles. I mean, we have these abilities to have a bike lane and to have sidewalks, and we built around all the schools, which were funded by Safe Routes to School, and no, people are not using them. So I don't know.
I think a lot of places, you know, I'm not defending one way or the other, but I too frustrate easily with the sidewalk thing. But I reflect back to whenever I was pushing a stroller and my wife was walking in the grass, you know. So a lot of our sidewalks are narrower in that respect. Yeah. So you can't really. In our neighborhood, there's pushed up by oak trees, but I think a lot of that is people. If there's a lot of times I see people in the street, it's two people, or someone power walking.
Yeah.
And I think maybe when you do see them on the street, it's probably a good idea in my mind to go look at the sidewalk and ask the question: is are they not on the sidewalk because it's a piece of junk, cracks, and tree roots lifting up slabs?
Berkeley uses the sidewalk.
Or just yell at him when
I see him power walking in the park.
He's power walking every day.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll never solve that problem. I just look at it.
No, you're right.
You can roll your window down and yell at them. Get your
exactly.
We do the same thing because a dog and two people don't fit on the sidewalk.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments, feedback?
So, I mean, what's the actionable?
Well, I would. Mr. Kendrick hadn't seen this yet, so let's carry it over this time and give him an opportunity to review it, just to make sure we're not getting into unintended consequences and things like that.
You sent to me in Word. I can send to you in Word.
Okay.
Yeah, I can send to you.
We can carry it over.
All right. We will carry, in lieu of review by Mr. Kendrick, we will carry over 10-03-22. And if there are no other questions about tabled items or things that we want to talk about public safety, we will adjourn.